with a little bit of information about how soils form, we can start to look more closely at the relationship between soils and forests. And the first thing that I want to point out is how soil patterns across the globe are related to the distribution of forests. When we do a transect from polar regions down into the humid tropics, down into the equator, we can see a general pattern of deeper soils. The deepest soils occur in the humid tropics, where it is warmest and wettest. And then we see a second peak in soil depths in mid-latitude forests. These are the wettest parts of the world. They are the warmest, and they also tend to be the warmest parts of the world. They are often, or maybe exclusively, are dominated by forests as well. I shouldn't say they're exclusively dominated by forests. There are some quite deep soils that are dominated by grasslands. So these effects are all interacting here, and in particular, climate and organisms are interacting in this case to form these different average depths of soils. So here's a pretty extreme example, but I think it's a good one for kind of understanding how soils form. Michael Collins led the command module on the Apollo 11 mission. He stayed in the module while Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong went down to the lunar surface. And he had this, he was interviewed in the New York Times last year, and he had this interesting kind of point that he's, a comment that when the crew came back, they were filthy, and they were covered in sediments that were really actually quite hazardous to them in the command module. And the reason for that is that the moon is a location with with no weathering. It has no weather. It gets some cosmic radiation, but there is no water, there is no weathering, and that means that all of the sediments here are virtually intact, virtually very, very similar to their form when they were initially created. That means that they are sharp, they are dangerous, especially if you're trying to land on them, and it's just really kind of the worst possible soil that you could have. And the reason for this is because they are unweathered, they are unshaped by moisture. The main point here is to emphasize or illustrate the role of climate in forming soils, and of course to acknowledge that without weathering of mineral or inorganic substrates, the world would be an absolute awful place to live. In fact, we simply wouldn't be here.